Welcome to today's Energy Central Power Session entitled Maximizing Beyond the Meter Revenue Opportunities, an expert roundtable discussion. A few housekeeping notes we'd like to mention. Given the fact that folks are working and schooling from home, we acknowledge that technical issues may be more pronounced. If for any reason we find the need to restart the event, we invite you to click your join link again to stay with us. In that case, we will also resend out those links for you. If you cannot get adequate sound from your computer speakers, you may dial into the audio portion using the telephone number listed in the right-hand panel of your interface under the audio section. Our power sessions are intended to be interactive with questions from the audience and the moderator. We invite you to submit your questions at any time using the interface on your screen. Now I'm happy to turn the floor over to David Wagman to kick things off. David, welcome to the event. You have the floor.
Thank you, PJ, and welcome to everyone for this power session and expert roundtable discussion on maximizing the opportunities of beyond the meter commerce. As PJ mentioned, I'm David Wagman, and I'll be your moderator for today's session, which is produced by Energy Central and sponsored by American Water, Homeowner Services, and IBEX. First of all, we'll start off with a thank you to our sponsors. American Water Homeowner Services is a division of American Water, the largest publicly traded water utility in the United States. American Water Homeowner Services provides custom designed warranty programs designed specifically for utilities that protect homeowners and their budgets from the high cost of home repair. The company partners with utilities and municipalities to provide value-added services that increase customer satisfaction while generating non-usage revenue. And IBEX is a global CLX leader, connecting the world's leading brands with their customers. The company specializes in delivering powerful customer engagement and insight solutions to amplify their value to customers. IBEX Utility Practice builds custom solutions for the entire life cycle, from new connections and a fully stocked e-commerce marketplace to drive incremental revenue in CSAT, to all-channel digital outreach and enterprise class voice of the customer and survey solutions that deliver customer intelligence. IBEX helps clients build the modern utility CX their customers demand. With me today for this power session are three thought leaders who will join me in an open discussion of beyond the meter services and offerings. Our panel members today are Rob Gilpin, Director of Business Development for American Water, Russ Henderson, Senior Research Manager with Chartwell, and Mark Wilkinson, Senior Vice President of Products for IBEX Digital. For more than 25 years, Rob Gilpin has been helping utilities, including Georgia Power, Eversource, Ameren, Encore, Avista, Alabama Power, Alliant Energy, Xcel Energy, JEA, and OUC, improve both customer experience and customer engagement. In his current role at American Water Homeowner Services, he is Director of Business Development. In that role, Rob works closely with both electric and gas utilities by assisting them in developing or enhancing their behind-the-meter solutions as a way of generating non-usage revenue, while also increasing customer satisfaction. Rob, welcome to this Energy Central Power Session.
Thanks, David. Glad to be here.
Russ Henderson tracks trends and identifies best practices proven to help utility companies become and remain leaders in customer satisfaction and customer experience through industry and consumer surveys, interviews, and group problem solving. Russ facilitates Chartwell's Outage Communications Leadership Council, a utility-only peer group, and serves as content advisor for Chartwell's Power Up Outage Communication Conference. Russ, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, David. Glad to be here.
And Mark Wilkinson has been helping utilities and their customer experience teams transform customer journeys, decode customer insights, and enhance revenues for nearly 15 years. At IBEX, he leads the teams delivering customer experience and e-commerce solutions for utilities and other regulated industries, specializing in amplifying the connection between businesses and their customers. Mark, it's a pleasure to welcome you as well. And I think that we'll just have to listen to you today because we're having some technical difficulties with the camera, but welcome to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think my camera saw my hair this morning and promptly broke, so I apologize for not being there electronically.
That happens. Glad to have you here. Now, before we get underway, let me invite our live audience to ask questions of our panel. We'll take our first questions in maybe 15 minutes or so. I can either read your question or you may ask it yourself. I'll give you that option. So let's get started. Rob, Russ, and Mark, I want to begin by talking a bit about what we mean by beyond the meter programs. Russ and Mark, I'll ask you to chime in as well, but Rob, I wonder if you could kick things off by talking a bit about the evolving beyond the meter landscape for utilities.
Sure, I'd be happy to, David. Thank you. And welcome, everybody. I think just based on, I know, we've had a lot of webcasts over the last 9 or 10 or so months, thanks to COVID, and had great success in partnering with Energy Central. I think it's really important to note, just based on this topic, that, I mean, this has been the most well-attended webcast that I've been a part of in really the last couple of years, even before COVID. So I think we've kind of hit a strong mark in that beyond the meter solutions have, one, they've been around for a long time. People don't really realize this, but you know, the ability for utilities to provide these non-usage, you know, revenue generating type programs have really been around for 100+ years. Utilities early on recognized the importance of selling things like appliances, devices that would in fact consume more of their own services, but then also the importance of, now that we're selling devices, you know, it's important to be able to service those devices. So beyond the meter, although that terminology appears to be pretty new to most people, it's, the concept itself is not new at all. Utilities have been doing this for clearly well over 100 years. Russ will talk a good bit today about the prevalence of marketplaces, and Mark will chime in a lot as well. You know, when marketplaces came on the sort of the scene about 4 or 5 years ago, it was more of a revolution than an evolution, and the fact that so many utilities have already deployed marketplace sites. So again, you know, although the terminology may sound a little new and different, this kind of idea of beyond the meter, the concept itself is not new at all. And in fact, so, you know, we've been providing these type of services primarily through warranty programs for 28 years. We actually built our business for our own internal customers by, you know, the fact that we're utility owned and have been for 28 years. Our programs and products and services were essentially designed for our own internal customers, excuse me, first and foremost, and stayed that way for about 10 years. It was only at that point that we really started opening up the channels to go beyond our own customer base. So, you know, we've learned a lot during those initial years, and we actually learned all of that with our own customer base. So again, for utilities that currently don't offer any type of beyond the meter programs, you know, that's okay. Utilities are, you know, not generally the first ones to adopt or adapt to new emerging technologies, and that's just part of our industry. But I think at the same time, that's why so many of your customers really trust your brand, and you know, you have that loyalty. So I think when you look at, you know, companies like Nicor, Vectren, OUC, Duke Consumers, DTE, FP&L, National Grid, Dominion, SMUD, TECO, these are all companies that have, you know, very large recognizable utilities that have been offering these programs quite successfully for a long time. Now we're even seeing emerging technologies, or companies like First Energy Home or Dominion's Bright Suite offering, where, you know, they're a regulated company is now sort of spinning off a deregulated organization to offer these types of programs in-house. And we'll talk a little bit down the road in this conversation between sort of the conundrum of build versus buy. But so, you know, behind the meter programs are not new at all. They've been extremely successful. Utilities do them primarily for two real reasons, two key reasons. One, to generate customer satisfaction or improve CSAT. And there's a lot of good analytics that talk about that from companies like Chartwell or JD Power. We've done a lot of our own surveys through Russell Research out of Philadelphia for many, many years now. But, you know, the first of the two value adds is utilities are looking for ways of improving customer satisfaction. Secondly, they're looking for ways of generating non-usage revenue. And, you know, COVID has certainly expedited that. But I think through a lot of our own successes through energy efficiency programs, for example, they're working, and in fact, that's really had a big impact on reducing carbon footprints and saving energy. But at the same time, it kind of makes it tough for some utilities' bottom lines. Debt forgiveness programs, we'll talk about that in just a little bit as well, and how it was the right thing to do when COVID hit, but it's going to be really hard, if not impossible, for a lot of your customers to pay that back. So there's never been a better time in the utility industry as a whole to find new programs that build off of your trust, build off of your brand, allow you to improve customer satisfaction and generate non-usage revenue, and significant revenue at that we'll talk about coming up, in large dollars. I think. And then finally, David, is that from our perspective, and most of our products and services evolve around conventional home warranties, water, gas, electric, line services, in-home services, appliances, HVAC, et cetera. That's what we built our industry on. But that industry is changing, and we'll talk a little bit more as we get into the kind of the body of this conversation about kind of where things are going next, and what the future of Beyond the Meter looks like. But just a couple of key points that I wanted to share with our audience. One, we're as Americans, we're staying in our homes longer. Well, it used to be about a 10-year average for home ownership, is now changed to 13 years, and that number will probably increase. Secondly, homes are aging. Now the average home, I think, is about 38, 37 years old. A lot of Americans just have a hard time coming up with the money to pay for, costly repairs. Conventional warranty programs are much like any other insurance type program. You pay a small amount per month, so that in the event that you do have a large costly repair, that program will kick in and not only protect the homeowner and their appliances and HVAC systems, et cetera, but they protect your budgets as well. 16% of all Americans are now 65 years of age or older, so fixed income becomes more and more of a challenge for people. A lot of banking information just showing how users are having a hard time, making a payment or, a cost of a repair of $1,000 or more, how challenging that is for about half of all US citizens, and that would have to be paid for either via credit card or you'd have to borrow money in some way. And then also look at what's happened with our homes since COVID has struck, in that, our homes now become our offices and our schools and senior care facilities. And so the demand on the home and the appliances and infrastructure on the home has become increasingly more viable and valuable as well. So, fact is that this is a conversation we've been having for about 100 years, but really until today, literally, this conversation, there's never been a viable conduit to talk about what Beyond the Meter is, what the benefits are, who's doing it, why they're doing it, and why, if you currently aren't experiencing or participating, why you should at least be looking at what that journey is and does, short-term and long-term. David, I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Thanks for the opening remarks, and you lay out very succinctly the range of topics that we're going to be talking about today. And Mark Wilkinson from IBEX, I wonder if you could chime in and talk about your perspective on the evolving market for Beyond the Meter services. What are you seeing from IBEX?
Yeah, certainly. It's anytime I bring new members on my team, they're always a little bit surprised to hear and to learn that utilities actually are some of the earliest cross-promotional programs in the United States. As Rob said, some of these programs have been around for more than 100 years. Electrification, selling appliances was a means to get electrification broadly accepted in a community. So, a lot of the team members that are new to the utility segment on my group are, sort of surprised to learn that utilities have been a big factor in those Beyond the Meter programs literally since the beginning of the industry. We see a lot of evolving changes. We see a lot of utilities starting to embrace the marketplace idea, and being somewhat disappointed with maybe the results, or they have an expectation of a certain amount of customer acquisition or customer integration, and then being disrupted a little bit by regulatory regimes and their ability to actually connect with customers. We look at Beyond the Meter programs, especially on an ongoing basis throughout a life cycle, as a perfect incubator for customer engagement and CSAT programs and enhancement of, say, energy efficiency and demand response and other program enrollments to connect the utility more closely with their customers and develop real insights into how the evolving customer base wants to interact with utilities. So we see this as a real incubator and a great opportunity to kind of springboard. Also, you know, in where utilities have in the commodity product range, where they have an almost monopoly relationship with most of their customers, having a beyond the meter program, having an off bill or an on bill non-commodity revenue means that there's a different level of customer service expectation, and it's a great place for everyone, both the utility and the consumer, to learn how to interact in a modern fashion, because those customer expectations keep amplifying. We all see the research, we all deal with the challenges that we face with changing needs of our customers and changing expectations of our customers. And it's, you know, in those sales and support environments, we really learn a great deal about our customers. So we see this as a great expectation, or a great platform rather, for customer expectations to be fulfilled in new ways for the utility as well.
Mm-hmm. And Mark, you raised a great point about this being all about customer expectations and the relationship with customers. Russ Henderson from Chartwell, I want to ask you, I was looking at your at Chartwell's 2020 residential consumer survey, and one of the findings was that half of consumers, if they were given the choice, would change their utility if another company offered lower prices. I wonder if you could talk in a bit more detail about characteristics of things like e-commerce and home warranty offerings, and how they can change the relationship with customers. What does your research at Chartwell tell us about that relationship and strengthening it?
Sure, absolutely. Well, yeah, as Rob and Mark have already talked about, you know, utilities are looking at beyond the meter programs. They've got a lot of different motivators for moving in that direction, flat demand and so forth, and they're kind of re-examining their role in customers' lives. And customer expectations have extended beyond reliable service to include increased energy efficiency, reducing carbon emissions, and so forth. And of course, you have the movement of Google and Amazon and others into the space, and in the other direction, like Rob's mentioned, regulated companies are spinning off into deregulated areas. And you know, utilities are having to think about loyalty and customer satisfaction in a much more immediate way than they have in the past, right? They're not just looking at them as ratepayers. And our research shows that customers are much more satisfied and loyal to their utility when they participate in these beyond the meter programs, when they actually use a marketplace. In fact, we find that the more touch points there are with the utility, between the utility customer and the utility, the higher the satisfaction tends to be. That you're kind of building your brand. And utility marketplaces offer an avenue to kind of expand that relationship with customers. And yeah, we definitely see a huge relationship between loyalty and satisfaction. If you guys wouldn't mind, would you share, let me see, slide 17. Kind of give you a bigger picture view of the utility customer relationship today. Here are a few takeaways from the report that David was mentioning. 54% of utility customers are would be willing to switch utilities if they had the option. Most of them, of course, don't have that option, but they would if they could for a lower price. That's the way we ask it in our consumer survey. And of course, customers' loyalty, we find, can be swayed if you increase their satisfaction and the ease of doing business. And we also find that highly satisfied customers are nearly 2 times more likely to stay than low satisfaction customers. And if you guys could go to slide 18. While it's true that most utilities customers don't have a choice, like I said, there are a number of actors in the industry today that we haven't really seen before. There's one in particular that uses marketing that sort of leads people to believe that they can provide clean power while their utility provides dirty power, right? And they're trying to kind of get in between the utility and the utility customer and kind of take over that relationship. And of course, many customers are kind of signing over that relationship with those people. So loyalty is, of course, very important. As you can see here, about 46% would stay no matter what, which is actually really good if you think about it. That's actually pretty pretty fantastic loyalty. And that is even higher if you go to slide 19, when you take a look at high satisfaction customers versus low satisfaction customers. We asked our survey respondents to rate their satisfaction with their utility on a scale of 1 to 5. And we split up those people into two different groups, the high satisfaction on the right here and the low satisfaction on the left. And as you can see, the high satisfaction customers, about 65% of 65% said they would stay with their utility even if they had another option. And low satisfaction customers, about 65%, about the same percentage, would leave if they had the choice. So this is definitely something that utilities need to, this is a really good indicator of satisfaction and the importance of loyalty and satisfaction for utilities. And we do find, as I said, that there is a big relationship between customer satisfaction and building that loyalty and using products and services that utilities offer, not just the standard things that they offer, like, you know, e-bill, ways to save money, outage push alerts, these kinds of things, but also beyond the meter marketplaces have an even higher impact on customer satisfaction than these other conventional utility products and services.
Yeah. Russ brings up some really good points here. If I could jump in for a second, because he's really talking about the value of that digitally engaged customer, and we're talking about loyalty, not retention. And this is also a little bit of a difficult concept in some circles where, you know, customers don't have a choice. So the idea of retention is not the issue, but it's really about loyalty. It's about the customer who's loyal to the brand. And isn't going to be dissuaded just about price. So customers that don't show a lot of loyalty, they're not demonstrating a lot of loyalty. On Russ's last slide showed that it was really customers would bolt over a price issue, any lower price, meaning it's really just a commodified relationship. And what you're finding where there's good brand amplification, where there's a high CSAT, those are loyal customers. They're not going to be dissuaded just by price. And if you think about you know, the benefit of, say, a beyond the meter program, a customer who's been able to purchase a programmable thermostat is saving a little bit of money on their electric bill. They're getting you know, an email newsletter that tells them how to save money or how to be more green, or in many cases they're finding things like water conservation from an electric utility. So they're learning how to stay connected in their home, get more value or more protection for their home, you know, save a little bit of money using a thermostat. Even more importantly, in the service contract world, being able to get a repair and protection plan, say, you know, that protects their consumer electronics. They may have purchased it through their utility, and now, you know, the mobile device that I carry around every day has a protection plan on it. As a customer, I'm much happier in that kind of engagement. I'm more likely to take advantage of a claim, and the happiest person on earth is the person who has filed a claim and recovered, you know, some support or gotten a repair taken care of. And the benefit there goes directly to the utility. The utility gets the brand amplification and the customer satisfaction investment from the consumer. So it doesn't surprise anyone when they think about it that way, but it is you know, that term loyalty is so critical in that equation.
And I think, you know, one thing that kind of works against the utility industry as a whole is that we've gotten so good at providing, you know, our products and services consistently that, you know, for most customers, you really don't think about your utility because the services, you know, generally it always works 99.999% of the time. There are those instances where we have outages, but, you know, I mean, most outages are typically caused by an act of God, you know, a lightning strike or a, you know, significant storm. But it gives utilities very little, because of their reliability factor overall, it gives utilities very little opportunity to reach out and communicate or touch that customer, you know, for the vast majority of that relationship. So I think these type of programs, you know, provide utilities a great ability to have multiple touch points and doing, you know, providing value-added services, you know, and continually kind of fostering that great relationship, and not just, you know, not just because the power's out or you've got a high bill all of a sudden. So I think it really provides a great conduit to better engage and communicate with your customers under normal circumstances where you really don't have that opportunity 98, 99% of the time.
Yeah, we're already getting some good questions in from our live audience today, and we're going to be moving to our first round of those questions in just a minute. But before we do that, we wanted to do maybe a little benchmark with the live audience. And PJ, if you could bring up the poll that we asked, we just wanted to kind of get an idea of where our audience is in the journey towards offering beyond the meter program. So if you'd like to take part and just fill it in really quickly, what we'll do is we're going to take a couple of questions, and then when we get back to the discussion, we'll take a look at the survey results and get some commentary around it. So we had just one question was kind of a definitional question to start with, and maybe Rob, I can give this to you to start with. The question is, we keep using the term marketplace. Can you give a firm example of what that is?
Sure, and I think actually I'd love to take a shot at that, but I think Mark is more qualified. Mark, why don't you take that one?
Okay. So sure, when we use the term marketplace, we're really talking about an e-commerce site that's been branded or offered in partnership with a utility. So a site like firstenergyhome.com, for example, there's a number of them out there. Some are branded with the utility, some are independently branded, but basically an e-commerce portal where the utility can offer new products and services beyond the meter to their customers.
Great. Okay. All right. Russ, does that resonate with you? Does that make sense?
Yes, that's pretty much the same definition that we use at Chartwell. Yeah, yep. We define an online utility marketplace as a e-commerce, a web-based store offering energy efficient products, appliances, smart home devices, services, things along those lines. And they can be hosted by a utility or by a utility partner. Yeah, and we find that about 30%, maybe a little bit more than 30% of the industry right now, about the 150 or so largest utilities in the US and Canada are offering a marketplace now.
PJ, I think Russ has a great slide. Could you find, I don't have the number in front of me, but that the slide that shows all the different utilities that are incorporating, that have already incorporated marketplaces? That's a really good slide.
26.
Lucky 26.
Slide 26, not the number 20, not 26 utilities, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, we did an audit. This was last year. We went through the research that we did on marketplaces. I've known Rob Gilpin for a number of years, and he along with a number of others in the industry encouraged us at Chartwell to really kind of dig into this marketplaces area a little bit more deeply. And we did an audit, which is to say we visited websites, we did interviews, and we talked to the biggest utilities in the industry. Chartwell's been around for nearly 30 years now. We have relationships with all the big utilities, and this is what we came up with. Yeah, and we found I think we also found that a number of utilities were planning on launching marketplaces. So I think we're going to see a pretty good amount of growth in this area over the next couple of years. With COVID now, it makes it a little bit, all the new rollouts have become a little bit less predictable than they were before. But I think we're definitely going to see a lot of growth in this direction.
Okay, and let me stick with you for just another minute. Both Sergio and Stephanie are asking kind of the similar kind of questions. Is there any research or what insights can you offer about which specific behind the meter products or services build the most loyalty with customers?
Well, our research so far has really focused on marketplaces. Right now, we haven't gone into depth with other things that much. But we do find, if you want to go to slide 20, I can share a little information here just for context, and then I'll talk about the impact of marketplaces. On slide 20, this is where we're talking about the impact on satisfaction of lots of different products and services offerings from utilities on satisfaction and the perception of ease of doing business. And what the percentages here, the change in satisfaction and the change in ease is the boost upward of satisfaction or the perception of ease of doing business, of just awareness that their utility offers these things. That is, offering ways to save money, outage push alerts, e-bill, e-pay, and so forth. And as you can see here, customers like to save money. That's a surprise, right? And push alerts, outage push alerts have a huge impact. Those are the two that have kind of the biggest impact. Yeah, outage push alerts, for example, are an interesting one. About 85% of the industry offers push alerts. Only about 38% of customers are aware of that, right? So that's an example of a big opportunity. If you marketed your outage push alerts even more, then you'd get a boost, not just from them actually using them, but from being aware of them. And it's the same with marketplaces. Even more dramatic, actually, if you go to the next slide. Consumers who use marketplaces are actually more satisfied, 14% more satisfied. So the impact of using a marketplace or just being aware that their utility offers a marketplace has a much more dramatic impact than really conventional products and services that utilities offer, which is a very surprising result that we got. So yeah, 14% boost in satisfaction just from using a marketplace, and 8% boost just from being aware that their utility offers one.
And David, can I jump in real quick? And PJ, if you would go to slide 6 for a second. So I won't spend much time here, but this is, I find this very interesting, and I hope you will too. So this is 4 different large customers of ours, as you can see, number of meters ranging from 430,000 all the way up to 2.2 million. My point in this is the percentage of penetration or participation, if you will. If you were to look at our 35 plus utility clients across the board, the average participation rate is 26.5%. So what I can promise you is that we know within American Homeowner Services that we can get 25% of your customers to participate in, and these are just our conventional programs. We're starting to offer a variety of virtual programs, some enhanced programs on top of this that are really designed to fit nicely, dovetail nicely with your marketplace site. So, to answer that question, we know that we can get, every bit of 25% of your customer base to participate. And then PJ, if you'd go to the next slide, number 7. The problem is that, what's the old saying? If you build it, they will come. What was that? Field of Dreams, great movie. The problem is that's not necessarily the case. There are a lot of utilities that have great marketplace out there, but really hard pressed to find them. Same with outage maps or other types of technologies. You can't just build it and then stick it somewhere and be surprised why customers aren't flocking to it. In many instances, they can't find it. So there are a lot of factors that go into the marketing of any of these beyond the meter services, and I think it's just important to point that out. And the 3 in red are to us, after our 28 years of history, are really the most important. The ability to brand, or co-brand at least, just to, even if it's just a simple recommendation on bill, as Mark, I think, had already pointed out, obviously, really helps to cement a partnership deal if you are partnering with a third-party vendor. And then we'll talk a little bit more down the road in this presentation about the move call and how that really is the most influential, most powerful marketing tool that you have when you've got that customer, that new customer that's starting service, or the customer that's transferring service. When you've got 1 or 2 minutes on the phone with that individual after the onboarding process has taken place, that by far is the most influential kind of marketing tool that you've got.
Yep.
Absolutely. And if I could magnify that a little bit on the, go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was just going to have PJ see if she could queue up the results from our polls, because that's kind of interesting too. And Russ, go ahead, and then we can take a look at the poll results.
Okay, yeah, just to magnify that, that's the importance of marketing that Rob was talking about is absolutely paramount. We found in our research on marketplaces that only 11% of utility customers have actually used a marketplace, but we found that that nearly 50% were interested in using a marketplace, right? And if you were marketing to those people, then they would be much more likely to actually use them, and then of course that would boost your customer satisfaction.
Yeah, it's the only thing I would add, and it's great to see the quick poll is, and in getting back to the question of, are there products or services that lend themselves to loyalty or CSAT more? What I would suggest is that it's a combination of all of them that reaches the highest CSAT. That currently, and Russ literally wrote the book on this topic. In terms of the research that he and Chartwell have been able to conduct is, and we've been talking around it, but there are 30% of utilities have some form of a marketplace. 0 of our participants are actually thinking about marketplace sites, except that they're thinking about other products that you would generally want to offer. The question becomes, what are the right products and services, and how do you engage with customers? Customers are looking for marketplaces. They're looking for a quick, easy way to get connected to a service provider to find what they're looking for. And the utility has an incredibly credible voice in that. What we always advise customers is, our utility clients is, you've got to find a way to leverage that first critical experience with the consumer, your new connection, right? It's a great bridge to sell, beyond the meter products and services, non-commodity products and services that will get high CSAT. But then you've got to create an ecosystem where the customer can come back and re-engage with the brand on a repeated basis. And the only way to do that is if you've got a place for them to go, a destination portal like an e-commerce or site or a marketplace, and then have a range of new products and services, often interconnected, that the consumer can trust coming from the utility, that they'll give the utility permission to offer them those products and services, and then there's a place where the utility, the consumer can buy them. So I think this is a really interesting poll to connect the dots on that.
Yeah, great, good. And Russ, I just to quote some more Chartwell research, since we're doing that today. I was interested in your report from September to show that around almost 60% of utilities said they had a mobile app, and 91 of those apps included a functionality for customers to make payments, but only about 9% of customers say that they were using that mobile app to pay their bills. So it gets kind of this disconnect, and you're offering it, but they may not use it. And I'm wondering, I want to move into kind of the next phase of our discussion and talk a little bit in more detail about e-commerce delivery options and platform architectures, and how those can help play a role, and how those get selected. And Mark, I wonder if you could get us started by talking about some of the approaches to evaluating objectives and selecting a delivery platform.
Certainly, and I referenced that stat from Russ's team quite a lot. It's not surprising when you think about the number of people that really are using mobile apps to pay their bills, but it's almost always the banking app, right? It's almost never the vendor app. It's almost always the banking app, because they make it really easy. It's very seamless. And banks are on the forefront of that. Financial services and internet companies are some of the most highly aligned to what their digital enabled customers want. And that's an area that utilities have struggled with. There's some research that's, most customers expect a little bit more from their utility in regards to the website. They want more functionality from the website. They want more offers from the website, more communication from the website. It has to be cleaner. They're looking for more of a modern interface. And that's where an e-commerce portal can really create some value for utilities. There are a number of good ones out there. There's always a buy versus build question. And having been in the industry on both sides of the equation for a long time, I can generally say that no one should ever try to build something unless it's their core competency. So it's easy for a software company to say, hey, we'll build it. It's not necessarily the best thing for anybody else to try and do that, especially as more and more of the services are now available in the cloud, and you can depend on a partner to be in that space as their core competency. I would say most companies benefit, not utilities particularly, but most companies benefit looking for a service provider to help with these things, if not on a build or lease basis, at least on an advisory basis. I think a lot of the marketplace has shifted, even for very large brands, to partner with the technology companies that deliver these types of services. So, the most easy example is Shopify and Magento and WooCommerce, some partners that deliver e-commerce portals, but they do it in a more generic fashion. And then there are specialty organizations. IBEX happens to be one of them, where we really tailor for particular industries, and we spend a little bit more time thinking about services. Products are fairly easy to do, but complex services are a little bit more difficult. And what utilities need to focus on, and what we advise, is always to try and make the interaction that the customer has as seamless as possible. It's just got to be easy. So making it easy to find products and services, making it easy to find information to help advise on help make a purchase decision or make a claim if you've purchased a solution. It really becomes a whole ecosystem that that customers are expecting. And unfortunately, unless you're in the business on a day-to-day basis, it's very hard to keep up with those expectations, let alone meet them. So we generally, from a technology perspective, would recommend that a customer, a client that's new in the space, look to lease these options through some form of SaaS play, a software as a service, or work with a dedicated partner on those types of solutions, then try to build it themselves.
If I can add something to that, it does look like about more than 80% of the utilities that are offering online marketplaces are doing it in partnership with with somebody for whom that is their core competency. And for those who are kind of doing their marketplace on their own, just share this with you. When we were doing our audits, sometimes we had to call people to find out if they had an online marketplace. Just to let you know, we couldn't find it until they sent us a link. We weren't able to find it. So that's just an example. That happened with a few utilities.
Yeah, it was interesting. To Russ's point, we were at a show a couple of years ago, and I met 4 or 5 different vendors that offered e-commerce portals for utilities, and they all had this. 2 of them had the same logo on their brochures, on their collateral, meaning 2 different companies were supplying the same utility with 2 different portals, 2 different marketplaces. And I spent some time on the utility site to try and find it, and I couldn't find it. And it really does go back to something, and Rob had a good slide on it just a moment ago in terms of the ecosystem and multi-channel. And the quote from Field of Dreams is exactly right. There's plenty of, we talk to clients all the time about this. Especially new clients who are interested in e-commerce. It's like, well, I built an e-commerce portal. Why aren't my customers buying anything from me? And too often what we find is, that link to Russ's comment, it's impossible to find. It's not a brand name or a domain that makes sense to the consumer, because we're all e-commerce consumers ourselves. We all know what to expect. And so if the steps to get to a marketplace or an e-commerce portal are very different from our normal habits, customers just won't get there. And so it really does take an ease of doing business, a frictionless system, and a regular level of engagement through email and through social and through referral to help your customers find and come back to those sites. I've got a couple of slides if you want to jump to slide 10. These are just some of the basic elements of e-commerce and marketplace technology that utilities or any company considering this should really keep front of mind. And one of which is you've got to be mobile friendly. This is a slide from Statista, but the share of e-commerce sales from mobile devices, tablets, and phones has this year reached about 50%. It's expected to go above 53% next year. And the traffic loads in some of our sites that we're hosting for utilities is over 70% for mobile devices. So you've got to be mobile friendly, because that's how customers are engaged. That doesn't mean you need a mobile app. That goes back to Russ's earlier point, which was, only 9% of consumers are regularly using a utilities mobile app. Mobile apps are great for companies where daily, weekly, monthly use is something that the consumers are are habituated to. But if you have a mobile enabled website, if you think about being mobile friendly first, easy phone numbers to get to, click to call or click to chat, text-based capabilities, simple visuals, that's really where the e-commerce end of the spectrum is moving. And if you flip to, I think, slide 11, you want to try and have as many products and services there as you can. It's no longer a technical hurdle to offer products and services. And so if you can put products and services in your marketplace, this gives your customer a reason to come back. And this is it's not part of the technology as much as the offer, where you've got a place where customers now are aware that the utility can offer new services, aware that there's new and interesting things to engage with. But you want to maintain some variety there and be as expansive as possible. And then I think slide 12, not to beat the slides to death, but from a technology perspective, and we keep going back to how do we get customers into these portals to begin with. Email is the best distribution channel, but it's also the hardest for some utilities to be able to engage on. Making it easy for that new customer. Right after that new customer experience, they've created a new Energy Start or a new service enrollment, giving them a reason to come into that e-portal and capture their email, invite the customer to provide their email to opt in for future engagement. That starts the life cycle of that digital engagement, of that digital customer experience. And now you've got a customer that's now going to be able to open your email. They're going to be reading energy efficiency information or conservation information or home improvement and repair and protection information, how to get more value out of their home. Those are all topics that are going to give the customer a good reason to come back into your portal, and the utilities now got that digital dialogue rolling, if that makes sense.
I think that in short, the key word here is just value add, regardless as to what beyond the meter program you're considering, and maybe this will be a good segue back to the results of the poll, which I thought that was really interesting in terms of the results. But the key here, folks, to any of these programs is value add. Make sure that they're valuable. This is not a contest to see who can check as many boxes as possible, just to say that now we offer a mobile app, but it's not very good, and now we offer an outage map, but it's not very good, or now we offer a marketplace, but you'll never find it on our website anyway. And it's all about the value add. And I mean, from our perspective, that's why we have a paid claim rate of 97%. The last thing we want to do with you and your customer is to get into an argument about, is this really a valid claim or not? In most instances, 97% of the time, we're just going to pay the claim because we know it's the right thing to do. So, regardless as to what vendors or vendors, plural, that you partner with, just make sure that they're highly experienced and they're highly reputable. I think this is a great opportunity to partner, because clearly for utilities, this is going beyond your comfort, sort of your comfort zone of beyond just providing, the core fundamentals of utilities. But the value add is I think the real key to making any of these programs work, that no matter what you offer, it's got to provide ongoing value to the customer every time.
I want to ask, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the concerns around privacy and around security. And while it's not core to our discussion today, I wonder if we could talk just a bit about some of those considerations with offering these kinds of services, and what's top of mind with utilities as they evaluate beyond the meter services in terms of security and privacy. I wonder, Mark, can you start the discussion a little bit and give some insight?
Yeah, certainly, and I appreciate the question. It's a critical one for certain, and the landscape's changing rather dramatically. California is leading the charge in terms of consumer privacy legislation. They're not quite sure how they're going to implement the rules. Everybody in the space is having to contend with them, but I think there's 13 or 15 states that are looking individually at creating some consumer protection and privacy rules that reflect, some of the same standards that California is bringing into market, which is basically that consumers should be in charge of their own data. And so that's absolutely a security concern. I don't know a single utility executive, especially in the CIO and COO's offices, that doesn't, lose sleep weekly in terms of cybersecurity risks, and anything they do in the digital space, without protection could expand that risk. So again, the need to partner really for both privacy and cyber or InfoSec protections. It's essential to make sure that when we're taking an email from a customer, that we're using it properly, that we're not violating any rules and regulations, but we're also doing it, in a customer-friendly fashion. We shouldn't be doing something with that data that the customer wouldn't want. Shouldn't be using it for the wrong purposes, or being lax in security about it. And then always being able to stay in partnership with leading technology partners is a way that CIOs and COOs can maintain some security, not only of the data integrity, but also the platform integrity. Again, if and this is a big reason why SaaS is such a compelling value in the space, because the cost of maintaining that security, if you're doing it all yourself or on-prem, can be overwhelming. You'll never escape the cost curves in a build versus buy decision. So I think, the security aspects certainly make it easier for the partnership decision to be made.
Russ, do you have any insights that you can add, or Rob?
We've heard similar concerns from our members. I'll just say that, and it's certainly true for outage maps as well as outage push alerts, things along these lines. Same security and cybersecurity issues kind of prevail, and partnering. And in these areas, of course, we see similar numbers for utilities partnering with somebody who has that sort of expertise.
Yeah, the fees can be the fees for violations can be rather dramatic. So, sending a text message, a blast of an outage alert that you don't have permission for can actually create a lot of fines. So it's always better to make sure that you're staying on top of those things.
Yeah, certainly with that, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, the FCC decision that came out in 2016, gave utilities a lot of protection where that's concerned. But they still absolutely have to keep their contact data clean, or they're going to be sending information to a customer that the number's been reassigned, and the safe harbor provision is only one contact. That's all. You have one chance to magically know that number is wrong now, and then you are open up to to a TCPA lawsuit again. So definitely something to think of.
We have some clients of ours, of the 35 plus utilities that we currently partner with, where they understand the importance, and we do all of this at our expense, promoting these products and services to the utilities customer base, primarily their residential customers, homeowners and tenants alike. But sometimes they're reluctant to just provide us with the list, or maybe through their PUC they can't or won't provide us a list of their customers. So we'll actually just find it at kind of with their prompting, a third-party organization that where we'll create the marketing content, they'll approve it, then we'll send it to a third-party vendor that they select, and then they in turn send the contact list to that same third party. So we actually never see or come in contact with that data. And then same with the credit card payments, and that's a whole different discussion. But through our 3 call centers, we're very careful to make sure that everything that we do is completely compliant. Even our CSRs, don't have access to the credit card information. It can be done in such a way. So there are a variety of ways, but it's a great conversation. Maybe we could actually put together an entire webcast around security, but there are a lot of great checks and balances that are already in place to ensure compliance and security.
Yeah, David, Rob brought up some great points, and they all become key questions for any utility that's considering these types of options. Those are the questions that they should be asking, right? So, PCI compliance. If you're going to be selling a new product and service, it's transacted on a credit card or on the bill. Are you making sure that you're taking care of that financial and personal information appropriately? That's a key consideration. Any technology, any partner that's going to be doing technology, can they survive a security audit? Do they have security standards and practices? Are they maintaining their data appropriately? Those are, the checklists that a CIO would engage with. Customer satisfaction, compliance reviews, QA, quality assurance, and recordings and things, so that in the event that a customer ever did escalate an issue, does the partner have protection? Is there technology in place to ensure that both the customer and the utility are going to be favorably disposed? Those are all great questions. They almost form a checklist for that partnership interaction. I think Rob makes those points perfectly.
Great. I want to ask also on this issue on this discussion around platforms is scalability, and what utilities should keep in mind as they begin to implement a beyond the meter platform, and then think about adding things like home warranties and appliance repair and marketplace sites, moving, relocation services. What scaling issues come into play, and how do those get addressed? Mark, you want to start on that a little bit?
Certainly, and this is another reason why partnering makes sense. Because if I were setting out today to build my own marketplace, and I had 500,000 consumers or 3 or 4 million consumers at scale in my marketplace environment, those cost controls become rather exorbitant if we're not careful, right? So working with the proper partners, not just necessarily for offering the services through an e-commerce portal, right? So you've got to worry about scale of visitors and traffic and transactions, but then scale, if you're successful selling, say, service contracts, can you support those service contracts? Can you take the claims? Can you handle the repair administration? Do you have a network? All of those kinds of concerns are questions that are essential when selecting partners at that level. You want to make sure that there's strong quality, and if you sold the product, can you support the customer through that life cycle? That journey is essential. It's the first question that really we recommend utilities start thinking about when we do discovery. We start doing journey exercises to understand, what is the vision for supporting that customer? What does that ecosystem begin to look like? And then we layer in the care and support and ongoing engagement with the customer. That turns into how you plan for scale. And then obviously, being able to keep the customer outreach. It's great to want a marketplace or to offer new products and services, but if you're not prepared to engage regularly with your customer through multiple forms of outreach, you might have a flash of 30, 60, 90 days worth of attention, and then long fallow periods where customers, new customers aren't connecting with that site again. So it has to be an ongoing commitment, I think, from a scale perspective, because you have to achieve some escape velocity or the program won't look like a success.
Rob, you have any thoughts on the scalability issue?
Yeah, it's I think for us, the core competency that we bring to the table is essentially twofold. Managing a network of 2,400 different technicians and contractors, electricians, plumbers, and HVAC technicians, 2,400 some odd different companies all across the United States, and constantly adding more. Leveraging, there are a lot of moving parts in that, being able to provide a better overall service, for you to call us, for us to dispatch a plumber, than for you to go out and find your own plumber. And just the call center, another key area. Obviously, severe winter weather is going to really impact, heating problems or significantly high temperatures for air conditioning. So I mean, just talking to a couple of utilities that offer their own in-house warranty programs, and how all of a sudden something comes along called COVID, and now, you've got to figure out how to get your own technicians, in this example, when you're internal or an internal program, with all of the safety gear, now that they're going inside homes, and just little things like that. So I think some of these programs, as Mark was alluding to, could have a lot of moving parts. And is that really your core competency? I think that's why we do all the heavy lifting for our utility partners. Their sole job is just to hold us accountable to the SLAs and to all of the things that they designed into these custom programs that we built. That's their only job. Just let us do what we do best. It's, over 28 years, we've gotten really good at this, and we're continuing to find new programs and services. But, 1 minute there's no requests, and then all of a sudden, temperature drops 30 degrees, and now you're just bombarded with calls, and every one of those is critical and important. So just being able to have that inherent scalability, it's why we operate 3 different call centers, and we have over 300 CSRs that are available in 24-hour-by-7, assistance, those sort of things, and just learning the hard way over 28 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I want to. It's a good segue into the third part of our discussion, which is to look at growth drivers for beyond the meter services. And Rob, you bring up the pandemic and everybody staying at home, and there is an opportunity for utilities that comes about through the change in the way people are doing work and living at home. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit to get the discussion going by explaining a little bit how the pandemic has affected how utilities and customers interact, and what expectations are, and what some opportunities are for utility beyond the meter programs.
Sure. I mean, COVID has, I guess, hopefully we'll be talking about this and learning from this for, many years to come, especially when our children look at pictures from weddings and social gatherings and ask, why does everybody have a face mask on? Let's hope that we can get through this as quickly as possible. But it's certainly been a very challenging year for a lot of reasons. And there are a lot of hurting people out there, people that haven't gotten a paycheck for, 6+ years or 6+ months. It seems like 6+ years. So, debt forgiveness programs and how quickly utilities have adopted to that. But the problem is that, if it was hard to collect a $150 utility bill, now 6 months later, how hard is it going to be to collect, or for the, your customer to pay, a $2,500 utility bill, especially now that we're getting into the winter months. So it's been really hard for a lot of different reasons. But at the same time, I think, and every once in a while it takes, some of these kind of unique situations, acts of God, we'll call them, to really kind of stir things up. And we're very resilient as a world. And who would have thought that we could have essentially moved people, tens of millions of people from offices into, working from home, and do so quickly and so efficiently. So I think through the, all of the challenges of COVID, we've learned a lot. But I think most importantly for our existing customers, and for a lot of, this has been our busiest 6 months ever out of 28 years, because utilities are looking for ways of helping their customers, knowing that their customers need a lot of help. PJ, could you go to slide number 5? And I'll just quickly touch base on this. But there are a lot of great benefits through these value add programs in terms of improving customer sat. But let's just talk about from a revenue perspective. And, again, there were I think we hit 301 registrations for this webcast today, this power session. Not all of you are currently on the line with us right now, but obviously it's a very popular topic. We certainly figured that out. And there are a lot of large utilities on board as well. So let's just say that you're a utility with a million meters. I mentioned 26.5% participation rate. Let's just use 20% because it's an easy number. But my question would be, what could you do with $4 million a year in net new revenue, non-usage related? What kind of goodness and cheer and love could you spread around with that kind of money? It's not, it's not going to put you on the cover of Inc. magazine, But, you know, even at $2 million, if you only have 500,000 meters, you know, think of the debt forgiveness programs, or as you adopt some of these beyond the meter programs, and let your customers know that every dollar that's generated, a profit made from these programs, goes to, you know, to fund other internal programs, such as a COVID relief program or low income programs or debt forgiveness programs, so that, you know, as I don't need the help as a particular customer, but by signing up for these programs, I know that I am helping. So becomes a win-win in that scenario. So I think you know, COVID has certainly kind of forced our hand to become, you know, to become different, to think differently. A little bit of love, a little bit of goodwill, I think goes a long, long way at this time. And, you know, what that kind of money could do, I think is really phenomenal out there to help, you know, with zero investment from the utility, by the way. You know, if you could find services or programs that provide value to your customers and in turn generate some money that you could either use above the line or below the line, however you, maybe ultimately long after COVID's gone, it prevents a use case. Or, you know, so there's so many different ways. It's wonderful to see our customers and how they've reinvested these funds in the many, many different ways. So I think COVID has been a real challenge for a lot of people for 6-8 long months. But at the same time, it's, you know, it's brought us together. It's forced us to think differently. Utilities we're not the quickest to adapt to new technologies or try new things, but, you know, that's okay. The fact that as long as, you know, we are always kind of pushing forward, and, you know, it's okay to just think a little outside of the box and to try some of these programs. And I think as we kind of start to wrap the program up, and we'll talk a little bit about implementation, you know, try a pilot, even just an internal pilot. Take some of these programs and just try them internally on your own your employees, and let those, your customers as well. You know, what a great way to ease into kind of a phased implementation, or just, you know, a crawl, walk, run. So I think COVID has certainly thrown us, you know, some wicked changes in our world as a whole, but I think it's also made us better in a variety of ways too.
Mm-hmm. And Russ Henderson from Chartwells, does your research shed any additional light on kind of the increased interest in some of the drivers that we're seeing this year over the past, you know, 6-9 months?
You know, Rob certainly touched on the financial difficulties that a lot of people are in right now, and certainly that is it's on the opportunities to save money, which are of course a huge driver for these marketplaces. Is what we found. We found that in our research that I think 17% or so have used a rebate on their utilities website or on their marketplace. Their satisfaction is much higher, and their satisfaction with the marketplace is higher, of course. And the interest in using rebates, of course, is about between 50 and 60%. So you see a huge amount of interest on the part of customers to save money, and that's a big way for utilities to draw in more interest in marketplaces in particular. And we see that with a lot of the participants in this space. They'll you know, emphasize the rebate, the discount, you know, draw a line through the old price and make the new price more prominent, like Amazon does. And if you make it clear, I'm saving you money, then that can be a really important way, especially in the area of marketplaces, to draw people in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Hey, Mark, I want to ask you a question. We have this comes from an audience member, a live audience member today, and the question is: do you think that there will increasingly be non-utility disintermediaries like Amazon and Apple that target beyond the meter revenue opportunities? Rob mentioned, you know, possibility for you know, for $4 million under certain circumstances. It's you know, it's a sizable revenue stream. What you know, what should we bear in mind as we think about these non-utility players like Amazon and Apple potentially looking at some of these opportunities?
Yeah, it was a great question from Steve, and I hope he's still on. We have an interesting perspective on this. So IBEX has been around for a long time. We're in 26 countries. I have 400 engineers working across multiple industries, and we have some exposure to a variety of industries, telecom, for example, internet, TV and voice services, wireless services, et cetera. And so my experience suggests that yes, there will be some of these companies. If you pay attention to Silicon Valley, the easiest way to get funding right now seems to be to say that you can disrupt a legacy industry. But if we look really closely at the history of that kind of disruption, it's actually a pretty mixed bag. So for example, there were some companies that wanted to get into fiber, and they found out how difficult it is to actually be an infrastructure company. And so I do think that there's some research out there that from a consumer's perspective, they would, if you ask a consumer, would you consider getting your power from another company like an Amazon or something where the customer recognizes a very, very high level of customer satisfaction and brand affinity and support assumptions about that brand like an Amazon or an Apple, as you mentioned. Certainly, almost any consumer would say sure, I'll take a look at that. But I think the appetite for experimenting and being an infrastructure company or having to compete with utilities in some of those spaces, I don't think there's going to be the same level of long-term affinity and long-term stability for those firms. So yeah, to get back to Stephen's question, I think there's going to be some companies that seek to disrupt and maybe disintermediate the relationship that utilities have with their consumers. But actually to be successful in that space is going to be hard. I mean, it's tough. And utilities have some advantages that those companies don't have. So I would expect long-term not to be the same level of disruption. We certainly haven't seen 99 companies able to offer internet to every home in America. So I'm not sure that real disintermediation can take place in the infrastructure world without massive investments that sometimes are a little bit hard to come by. I wouldn't mind commenting on COVID too, if we could return to that topic for just a minute. I think COVID has done three things for the utility industry, and each of which is opportunity mixed with the craziness. COVID has given utilities an opportunity to engage very, very differently with their customers. The CARES Act and delinquent accounts and the financial pressures that a growing number, or well, hopefully not growing for much longer, but a massive number of people are struggling with, has given the utility a new avenue for engaging with customers about saving money. It's also shifted, as Rob mentioned, it's shifted a massive number of people, we think on a relatively permanent basis, into work at home situations. I know plenty of Fortune 1000 companies that are rethinking their real estate strategy because they've discovered over the last 9 months that they don't need everybody at headquarters or everybody in an office. Exactly. And so more and more work from home gives the utility an opportunity to engage with customers about working from and living in the same location. And so utilities can actually engage on delivering different kinds of services, repair and protection plans, support plans, home connections like internet, TV, phone, redundancy, because Lord knows we've all experienced that. The world is figuring out how to work on residential internet now in the vagaries of technology. So I think utilities as a trusted brand, as a trusted presence in every household's life, really has an opportunity to engage differently with their customers. Another aspect is e-commerce is not going anywhere. It's now become a definitive and disruptive force in the way we buy things, and COVID's actually changed that. Again, we think on a permanent basis. The fact that my 77-year-old father on a smartphone can now order from DoorDash and Uber Eats and get his groceries delivered to his home, that tells me that trend is not going backwards. So it's not a matter of waiting for Gen Z and millennials to be the dominant force in the install base. It's now every consumer at a utility is now going to have higher expectations for digital engagement, for online commerce, for cleaner, faster, better websites, et cetera. And again, I think that e-commerce dimension gives a real innovation lab to a utility to experiment with that can impact other digital opportunities within the customer base.
Yep.
And then and finally, I think it's an opportunity, going back to the first point, it's a real opportunity for utilities to offer new products and services to their customers. Again, shift to work at home, more people, spending more time in their homes. Even if we get back to a semblance of normal, that opportunity is still there for the utility to offer different kinds of plans. And there's a limited window to establish themselves as the right voice for the customer to listen to. And that's why I think a lot of these beyond the meter programs have perfect timing resulting from COVID, because the level of communication between utilities and their customers is not going to slow down over the next 12 to 18 months as we work through COVID and delinquent accounts and write-offs and all of those impacts. So if utilities can really harness that, I think it can be a force for positive change.
Yeah, makes sense. Good, great. Hey, Rob, I wonder, I'm mindful of the time, and we're getting near the end of our session today, but I wonder if you could walk us through some of the key implementation considerations. You talked a little bit about that earlier, the key implementation considerations and steps that work well in building internal support and in launching a Beyond the Meter program.
Sure, love to, and I'll try to be very brief. So it's a great question, great conversation. Mark already alluded to kind of the build versus buy conundrum. And in fact, I talked to multiple utilities, some of which are on this this power session, about now, what's happened is that they've created some of these programs, whether it's a physical surge device or warranty programs or appliance repairs, and unfortunately they've grown so significantly that now it's become a little more than they really care to manage. They just didn't realize that they were going to be that successful. So that's one issue that you have to be careful of. I would obviously, we provide those services. You can certainly look at the build versus buy, and you should look at the build versus buy. I love, it was the previous CTO at Austin Energy in a conference once said, if it takes you longer than a year to build it, you need to outsource it. So that instead of spending 3 to 5 years trying to figure it all out, just at least find a valuable, viable partner. Start that way. Start externally. You can always bring it internally. That's easy to do. You can start as a pilot if you outsource, so that you have no investments in time and resources, et cetera. I think it's, again, important to point out that our programs require not a single dollar of investment capital, from our utility partners. So pilots, I think, make a lot of sense, or a phased implementation, crawl, walk, run, as we call it. Start with 1 or 2 basic products, gas line, electric line, before you get into some of the more, advanced services, or just some of our virtual programs, like a virtual surge protection, or consumer electronics program that would protect everything kind of in the house with a plug on it that's not an appliance. So those are just some simple ideas. Now, as you get into like billing integration and call handling integration, those are big things, and they take time and effort and resources on both sides. We typically will always pay for those integrations or reimburse the utility. But again, those can be, can be advanced. We have some clients that will start that way right out of the, right off the bat. But the beauty about all of these programs is that you can ease into them at your, at your pace. Whether you want to jump in with both feet, or if you just want to stick one toe in the water and try it for a couple of months or a couple of years, that's okay. We can devise and build custom programs around your specific needs. In some instances, we just build custom programs around the utility. It's not really something we currently offer, but something that they do. So we'll actually buy that book of business, or we'll help them manage that book of business, where we're now taking that over on their behalf. Or even some hybrids in between. But I think with just some open conversation, we can really help walk you through how these implementation processes can be very, very painless, very simple, and have no cost associated whatsoever.
Okay, all right. And now we're in the lightning round here with questions, and let me ask Mark, if you could start with this: practical next steps that you'd like to leave the audience with today. What are the practical things that they can do once they get off this session today?
That's a great question. We recommend to all of our partners that they do a little bit of an internal discovery session. Talk about internally about what the goals and objectives would be. Is it is it feasible to engage with customers internally, or do you need a partner? Is it feasible to build an e-commerce portal, or do you need a partner? What are the products and services that you want to offer? What's the kind of customer care engagement that you'd need in order to be successful, and just do a little bit of an internal discovery, and then it really is just a matter of deciding on how, not if or when. It's really a matter of deciding on how, because the research is overwhelming. Customers are ready for these things. They're asking for utilities to spend more time, engaging with customers and offering these products and services. The benefits to offering them are great. So it really just a matter of, understanding what the goals would be so that you can figure out how to promote these types of programs.
Mm-hmm. And Russ Henderson from Chartwell, what are practical next steps that you can offer?
I think Mark covered it really well. Of course, at the end or at the beginning, it's important to, of course, begin with the end in mind. You want to figure out what your strategic objectives are. I think with a lot of these marketplaces, the objective in the beginning with some of the ones that were started a number of years ago was to increase uptake of rebates, right? That was pretty much it. Only 7% or something of their customers were using them, and then they kind of got a little bump in that, and then they were kind of satisfied. I think it's important to have a full spectrum understanding of this thing and spell out exactly what you're expecting from it, establish KPIs for it, obviously, and develop an ongoing commitment is we've mentioned already in this panel discussion. Having an ongoing commitment to customer engagement, customer experience, and to marketing is fundamental, I think, for these products and services.
Mm-hmm. And Rob Gilpin, you get the final word today. Practical next steps.
Well, thank you. PJ, could you pull up slide number 8 for me, please, ma'am? So I think, when you look at things like, most people think of, sort of the conventional marketplace as a place to sell smart thermostats and LED light bulbs. And obviously marketplaces have grown so much beyond that. And, Mark's point about everything being mobile friendly. If you can't create the transaction from a mobile device, you've really missed the mark. We're now taking our conventional warranty programs that have historically been sold through direct mail, direct marketing, email marketing, the move channel, and now moving those over into marketplace environments, especially some of our more virtual products like the Surge and consumer electronics, as you see here. A great place if you're not currently thinking about smart home or alarm services, you really need to be. Or how about offering, sort of in-home technical support, a Geek Squad sponsored by, Acme Energy, or a great place to position your mover services if you're currently using those types of programs or offering them or thinking about it. Or we own a leasing company, so being able to provide generators and to do it affordably, so that instead of having to fork out, gosh, $6,000, $10,000, the ability to make it a $295 monthly fee that appears on the utility bill as a convenience, or same with home energy, home battery storage, and solar. And for us, I think the next frontier, in terms of our organization, is predictive analytics. Yes, we can react very well to fixing a broken HVAC system, but wouldn't it be really great if you got a call from a partner of the utility that said, David, we're starting to see some, strange alarms based on your HVAC system, your compressors, signaling multiple times, much more than it should be. So we think it's maybe just dirty filters, but would like to send somebody out to, to take a look. There's no cost, of course, because it's under your, your protection plan. But it's one thing to fix something once it breaks, and we do that really well, but wouldn't it be great if we could prevent the failure to begin with? So I think if you look at, kind of the whole concept of a marketplace as really kind of a way of future proofing, and, what we're talking about today will be different, obviously, than a year from today and 2 or 5 years from now, but to already have that foundation and that platform. So, when we talk about a beyond the meter journey, I think, what I'd love to do is to have some one-on-one conversations with all of you folks. And I know Mark would as well. And if you're not a member of Chartwell, you really need to go visit their website and talk to them about, all of the data and the analytics that they provide to their members. But let's have some one-on-one conversations and really help you in your journey. There's a lot of good analytics. There are a lot of good customers that have already gone, ahead of you with IBEX and with American Water. So, we're not asking you to do something that, is bleeding edge by any means. There's so many utilities that have done this ahead of you that are having great success, and now they're able to grow and expand those programs. So if you don't have a journey, let's talk about getting one started in the next couple of years. If you do have a journey already in place for beyond the meter, let's talk about ways of expanding it. If we can get 25% of your customer base involved in warranties, that's great. But not everybody's going to be interested in one particular product. So again, it's why ice cream stores sell lots of flavors, different strokes for different folks, as they say. So I think this is a great place to start the discussion. And I'll guarantee you this, 2 years from now, the whole concept of beyond the meter will be a household term. It's still pretty new to utilities, but that's changing. It's not just an evolution, it's now a revolution. So if you're not talking about it internally, you really need to start doing so.
Great, thank you. Well, we'll hold you to that. We'll see you at least 2 years from now. Certainly hope much sooner than that. And with that, I hate to bring this discussion to a close, but our time this time is up for this power session. We will review any unanswered questions from today's live event and can post answers under a special topic page within the next week or so. Energy Central also will be sending out a recording of the session along with a link to the follow-up Q&A within the next week. And please take a minute to complete our survey at the end of the session. Your feedback always is greatly appreciated and will be used for future sessions. I especially want to thank our sponsors today, American Water Homeowner Services and IBEX, and our 3 panel members for a terrific discussion, Rob Gilpin, Russ Henderson, and Mark Wilkinson. I'm your moderator, David Wagman, and for everyone at Energy Central, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on an upcoming power session. PJ, back to you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, speakers. Fantastic presentation. Thank you, audience, for attending. We hope you've enjoyed today's discussion. Please have a wonderful rest of your day, and this does conclude our conversation.
Thanks.